Hello, everyone. We really appreciate all the enthusiastic response that we have received about our Peace Talks webinar series and with all your encouraging feedback. Thank you so much. This week's Peace Talk webinar is very special and will focus on a very important and timely topic. It's the prospects and challenges for peace on the Korean Peninsula in light of recent developments. We are very privileged today to have expert specialists on this topic as panelists. Ambassador Joseph DeTrani, Dr. Alexander Monserov, and Ambassador Ka-Chung. The panelists will speak for 7 minutes to address the overall topic, followed by questions and answers. Once their statements are finished, the audience will be able to have their questions presented to the panelists. Be sure to submit your questions by email at peacetalks@upf.org and include your name and position. You are welcome to make comments on chat and other questions. We will try to get in as many questions as possible. The bios of the speakers and announcements relevant to the webinar are also available on chat. Translation will be offered in French, Korean, Spanish, and Russian. If you need translation, please click on the globe in the bottom of the screen and then the language of preference. Today's webinar has been recorded and our link will be available on our webpage at upf.org/peacetalks and on UPF's Facebook account later today. To introduce today's program and to moderate the panelists, I call upon Dr. Thomas Walsh, Chairman of UPF International. Dr. Walsh?
Well, thank you very much, Jeannie, and good morning to our audience and viewers for this Peace Talks, part of our UPF webinar series. And we're excited, as Jeannie said, to have a strong panel of experts to address our topic, which focuses on the Korean Peninsula. It's been an area of a lot of interest recently. One being the recent COVID crisis, which is still afflicting many of our countries, and Korea has been a bit of a poster child of good governance during this crisis. We've also had the disappearance of Kim Jong Eun for a number of weeks that created a lot of discussion and chatter about succession issues and the stability on the peninsula and the future prospects for peace. Also, there were recent elections in Korea that saw a very strong showing for the ruling party of President Moon Jae-in, and I think we're interested to know the implications of that, the growing tensions between the US and China that are growing out of the COVID crisis, a number of factors. And we're gathering on a very significant anniversary of VE Day that's celebrated by the Allies, at least Europe and the United States, on May 8th. I think in Russia it's celebrated on May 9th. But again, reminds us of a major historical conflict of huge and enormous proportion of our aspiration for peace. And that's what brings us together today with these three great panelists. Ambassador Joseph DeTrani has had a very distinguished career in public service that includes positions at the State Department at very senior positions in the high level, as well as the CIA. He was a special envoy to the six-party talk, so I'm eager to hear from him, and I'm sure you are as well. Please let us now hear from Ambassador Joseph DeTrani.
Thank you, Dr. Walsh. It's an honor being here, and I thank UPF for having this discussion this morning here. I'm speaking out of Washington, D.C. Let me just say, this is, as we all know, a critically important issue. The prospects and challenges for peace on the Korean Peninsula in light of recent developments. COVID-19 obviously is the key recent development. And as Dr. Walsh indicated, the Republic of Korea handled and is handling the COVID-19 issue extremely well, and it's a model for other countries. So this is extremely positive. But when you compare that to the dearth of information we have from North Korea maintains there are no COVID-19 issues. I think the sense is that with the approximately 900-mile border with the People's Republic of China, it's likely COVID-19 indeed is an issue for North Korea. And given the problematic health service situation in North Korea, this has to be a challenge for the leadership in North Korea. Compounding that, of course, is what we just saw over the past week and a half with the non-appearance of Kim Jong Eun and the media speculation. It's not only media speculation, but also government speculation about the status of Kim Jong Eun. Was he alive? Was he ill? Was he gravely ill? Did he deceased? Was he deceased? That speaks to a big issue. And I think we have to focus on that issue, the lack of transparency into North Korea. And that's part of the tragedy on the situation with North Korea, because there isn't that contact, there isn't that interaction, there isn't that obviously transparency into issues. But conversely, it's the inability of even the Republic of Korea and others, to include international organizations, to contribute. If there are issues in North Korea, how do we contribute? Now, North Korea said they don't need aid on that. The Republic of Korea, the United Nations, the United States, and others have offered aid. They say they don't need aid on that. But the fact of the matter is, North Korea has a number of sanctions that are significantly biting as we speak, whether it's petroleum, whether it's crude oil, whether it's their inability to export. And that's affecting certainly their economy. And we know a good portion of the money they receive through their exports goes into the nuclear missile program, but obviously it's also affecting the people. You know, there's a statistic I remember, and that's with the sanctions on North Korea on the petroleum and the crude oil, that the amount they're permitted to receive in 1 year is commensurate with what Australia, about the same population, 25 million people, imports in 1 day. So, and when you talk about the agricultural sector, obviously the importation of oil and crude oil and so forth lends itself to fertilizers and other elements of the well-being, if you will, and that certainly affects the people. Look, we saw with the COVID-19 issue, we saw with the disappearance of Kim Jong Un, the sense that maybe there would be instability in North Korea. Well, I think Kim Jong Un now, he's appeared. He has shown he is not deceased. He's not gravely ill. He made it very clear that he's well with his pictures in the visiting a fertilizer plant. Now, did he have a procedure? He could have had a procedure. We don't know. There was some reporting about Chinese doctors going into North Korea with the head of the International Liaison Department, Song Tao, which is very significant. If doctors did go in, it could be to oversee or to participate in a procedure. It didn't have to be a very serious procedure. It could have been a procedure. But having the head of the International Liaison Department go in, I think that's important because that's the co-equals. It's party-to-party relations. So when Song Tao goes into North Korea, he usually meets Kim Jong Un. So it's important now. We saw Kim Jong Un. He's alive and he's well. But looking at other issues where people were saying if he had passed or was incapacitated, who would follow? I maintain Kim Jong Un, since he's taken over in 2011, has made sure that he has surrounded himself with loyalists. Not only does he have loyalists around him, but I think he's also looking at succession. Kim Yo-jong, his younger sister, obviously is one of the likely ones who would follow him in the name of the Kim family. She was just elected to the standing committee as an alternate member. That's very important. A year ago, 2019, Chae Young-hae was promoted to be the president of the Supreme People's Assembly. He's also the vice chairman of the State Affairs Commission, second to Kim Jong-un. These are the likely people who would follow. So I think we should just relax a bit and focus on what? Focus on implementing the Panmunjom Declaration, which is between North Korea and South Korea, which is a commitment between both Koreas to pursue a peace, to pursue the lack of reconciliation and a non-nuclear weapons peninsula, non-nuclear weapon Korean peninsula. And my view is that we need to see more between the ROK and the DPRK in regards to separated families, the visitations, looking at visits to Mount Kumgang, interaction. So there is more of a dialogue. There's more transparency of what's going on in North Korea, and there's more people-to-people contact, to include looking at Ka-Chung and reconstituting some of the programs that could lend itself to humanitarian assistance to North Korea to contend with the COVID-19 issue, which we believe is in North Korea. So there's a lot. There's the Panmunjom Declaration, and that goes back to 2017, April 2017. There's also the Singapore joint statement between President Donald Trump and Kim Jong Eun, as with the Panmunjom Declaration, President Moon Jae-in and Kim Jong Eun. Both these declarations should be implemented and pursued aggressively. I think we have that mandate, and this is where UPF and organizations like UPF come into play, indicating very clearly that we want a peaceful resolution to issues on the Korean Peninsula, and the two Koreas should be interacting in a meaningful way so that intra-Korean relations are becoming that much more vibrant and meaningful for the benefit of what? For the 25 million people living in North Korea, but also for the 50 million people living in South Korea, and eventually movement towards what? Unification. This is the end goal, and this is something I believe is attainable. So I will end on that. Let me just say there are a lot of issues out here, but I think the key one here is implementing those two declarations, the Panmunjom Declaration and the Singapore Declaration, getting President Moon Jae-in in the South, interacting with the North, and the same thing with the United States, and then international organizations like UPF, indicating that this is a global issue. We all need to participate and work towards peace on the Korean Peninsula. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Especially these very, very practical and specific recommendations, I think very helpful. If I can just ask a follow-up, you mentioned the importance of transparency, for example, and this is a big issue. There are broader discussions about what kind of countries in the future are more effective in dealing even with pandemics, the liberal democracies that are open, or the more authoritarian democracies, let's call them. So I think your emphasis on transparency is a prime topic. I'm wondering also about the implications of the recent elections, and that the party of Moon Jae-in, his administration, seems to be empowered. Do you see that as opening up an opportunity for the kind of dialogue and rapprochement that you're recommending, and that I think UPF wholeheartedly supports?
I think, Dr. Walsh, that's right on the mark. I think the recent elections in South Korea, the parliamentary elections, where President Moon Jae-in's party, the Democratic Party, won 180 of the 300 seats. That's a mandate for President Moon Jae-in. He has 2 more years to tenure to move forward with North Korea to pursue elements of rapprochement that we talked about. This is, and I think it's again in pursuit of what they've both agreed to in April of 2017, which is actually peace and reconciliation and a non-nuclear weapons Korean Peninsula. This is powerful. Yes, I think the elections in the South were so key, Dr. Walsh.
Well, thank you. We'll return to some of these issues, and I'm going to move on to our next panelist, who is none other than Ambassador Ka-Chung, a long and very distinguished career also in public service. He served in various diplomatic posts, I know, in Egypt and Italy and Russia, and has worked closely with the United Nations, with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, very knowledgeable. And so I'm going to give the floor to you, Mr. Ambassador, Ambassador Ka-Chung.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. I'm very glad to see you. I'm very much honored to share my view on the prospects and the challenges for peace on Korean Peninsula in light of recent development. The recent development, so among the recent development, the most important thing is 2 things: pandemic virus issue and the Korean general election. As you mentioned, general election, Moon Jae-in party has the victory, overwhelming the victory. So President Moon Jae-in has a mandate to conduct foreign policy as they want to guide. But so in that context, the Moon Jae-in will have a press conference on the Sunday, the 10th of the March, the day after tomorrow, marking the 3 years of his power. But in his the press, we are expecting he will mention about the prospect of the relations between two Koreas. But North Korea turn away the cooperation with the South Korea. North Korea, particularly Kim Jong Eun, focus on the importance of relationship with the United States, particularly relationship with the President Trump. Whatever South Korea government propose a good project to improve bilateral relations, including connection of the railroad. But I don't see much the prospect on that relations. So it is my view, the dialogue between Kim Jong Un and Trump should be reboot first. But now the President Trump is very much engaged in his own election campaign. So that's why North Korea is very much uneasy about the present situation. The issue of the disappearance of Kim Jong Un for last 3 weeks is in my view is a sort of impact on to draw the attention of the United States. Of course, and also his health problem is a serious one. Although he appeared on first day of the May by participating in construction ceremony, but it is a fact he has a health problem. His health problem is a very serious problem on North Korea as well as Korean Peninsula and in Northeast Asia in general as well, because North Korea has the nuclear power, if nuclear the weapons. If there is a crisis in North Korean regime, it is a very dangerous things, very risky thing, because of we should know who control the nuclear facilities. That's why we should pay attention. And first of all, international community should develop the regime to control the North Korea. And we have to compare very important things. When the Kim Jong Il was very much sick, at that time, United States and China cooperate. They have a meeting and they develop the plan to how to control North Korea, how to control the nuclear problem. But now pandemic, the issue, we know we are now witnessing the friction between the China and United States is very much further aggravated. That is very much dangerous. This case, the lack of the leadership of United States and China has created very serious problems for the entire world. So under that circumstances, when we have the health issue of Kim Jong Eun, it will create very serious the problem on the peace in Korean Peninsula, not only in Korean entire region. So we should have we have to develop the contingency program. I would like to ask the United States whether United States is prepared or have the contingency plan in the crisis of Korean Peninsula. China is, they already deployed the soldiers along the Yalu River and Tuman River. They are ready to intervene. Of course, we know United States also conducting a very special operation by mobilizing the strategical the defense asset around in Korea and Japan and the United States. They have such a operation, but still I wonder whether United States is ready to intervene because of the election, presidential election. And North Korea, Kim Jong Eun, they want to see the re-election of the Trump. But now in the United States, the popularity of the Biden is increasing. So it will be the source of the worry of the North Korea. So it is also a very dangerous thing. And with regard to the nuclear issue of North Korea, I myself involved in negotiation with North Korea to produce the rule of the conducting inspection because Korea's agreed to denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, but we failed because the position of two Korea is far apart in the side. North Korea doesn't respect international the principle established by the United Nations. They ignore such a rule because they think all the international rule is a product of the United States. So that's why they oppose to that the basic norm to conduct negotiation. That is very dangerous the situation. And Kim Jong-un's the health is not good, very bad. So there will be the power vacuum. We should think about the possible power struggle about when the power vacuum is occurred. So UPF should mobilize the wisdom. How to we have to mobilize the more wisdom about the contingency, which is very possible. In the case of the Syria, there was when there was the power vacuum, there was the internal friction, but it is manageable. But in case of the North Korea, they have the nuclear programs, nuclear weapons. So this is the very different case from the Syria. So since this issue so risky and so dangerous issue, we should have the governance of international order. So I'm worried about we are victimized by the friction of the big powers. So we want certain the law to improve to have the good governance. The nuclear issue, we don't have any progress since, even though Moon Jae-in the focus on improvement of with North Korea, still
Ambassador Chung.
yeah, we don't have any result. So I would like to conclude abandoning this kind of the occasion. We should more seriously tackle this issue. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Bezer. And I hope a little bit later that perhaps Ambassador DeTrani and Dr. Mansourov might reflect a little bit on the preparedness issue, should there be a regime change or something related to Kim Jong Eun's health lead to a crisis, and what level of preparedness. We're talking a lot about preparedness for pandemics, but we have to think geopolitically as well. But I'd just like you to give us a brief window, just for a moment, if you just address the issue in the elections. The Ambassador Tae Young-ho was elected to the National Assembly, I think in the Gangnam district. How's that being viewed in North and South, briefly?
It is a very shocking news, I think, to the North Korean people. North Korea is very much controlled, but still the information is flowing to the North Korea. It will be very shocking news to North Korean people. And now Tae Young-ho, he too much believe that Kim Jong-un has a serious the problem. So he wouldn't be, he didn't expect the reappearance of the Kim Jong-un. But however, we should admit that Kim Jong-un has a health problem.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. We'll come back to some of the very important issues you raised, but I want to move on to Dr. Alexander Mansourov, who's currently teaching at Georgetown University. He's a very established expert in the field. He was trained at Moscow State University and studied at Kim Il-sung University in North Korea in Pyongyang, and is fluent in Korean, Russian, and English, and is widely known and respected throughout the world for his expertise in areas of East Asia and the Korean Peninsula in particular. So I'd like to turn now to Dr. Alexander Mansourov.
Morning, everybody. Thank you, Tom. First of all, let me congratulate everybody on the 75th anniversary of the Victory in Europe Day. This is an important holiday, important anniversary. My grandmother met that day in Berlin in 1945 on May 8th. She made it all the way from Stalingrad to Berlin. Yesterday, President Putin held a telephone conversation with President Trump and President Macron of France to congratulate the Allies on this V-Day. And all the military parades have been postponed until better times, just like the UPF annual gathering in Seoul has been postponed until better times, but we hope one day we will be able to reconvene once the air traffic is on again. Now, this is going to be one of the most politically incorrect presentations that you're going to hear. Why? Because first of all, I'm going to say that it's business as usual in North Korea, despite all the malicious and fallacious rumors about Kim Jong-un's health. Kim Jong-un and his family are well and healthy. There is no panic buying in Pyongyang. Give me a break. I mean, buying, I mean, buying what? There is no public unrest in North Korea, despite some of the reports. There is no amassing of Chinese troops on the North Korean border. And by the way, Song Tao did not go to North Korea despite some of the reporting. Song Tao, the head of the Chinese International Department. There is no unusual movement of North Korean troops along the DMZ or along the North Korean Chinese border or the Pyongyang Defense Command. On the opposite, North Korea adheres to its normal political calendar and its regular national security plans. They just held the third session of the Supreme People's Assembly with 700 delegates from all over the country gathering, and Kim Jong Eun was just prudent not to go into this meeting when nobody was tested for exposure to the pandemic. Now, North Korean Prime Minister and senior members of the government tour the country with their on-site inspections of state-owned enterprises. They would not be doing it if there were any emergency underway. New plants, new social capital facilities are being commissioned, like the fertilizer plant, like the Pyongyang General Hospital. North Korea, if anything, what we observe is an uptick in military exercises. North Korea continues to test its short-range ballistic missiles without any pause. North Korean foreign minister just met with the Russian ambassador in Pyongyang. Kim Jong Un sent a letter to Xi Jinping congratulating him on his handling of the COVID. So nothing unusual is going on. Moreover, in contrast to the previous patterns of behavior, North Korea this time decided not to be different and adopted the world's best practices in coping with COVID-19. They closed their borders with China and Russia way before the United States or any European country, as early as January. They imposed the 30-day quarantine on all foreigners, not just 14, 30-day quarantine, including the diplomatic couriers. Diplomatic couriers were basically secluded in the hotel for 30 days. They ordered wearing the mask to everybody. And you could see on the video when Kim Jong Un showed up, basically, and the reason he disappeared probably was because they practiced social distancing, very reasonable choice. Another reason, in my opinion, is, look, the guy has been in power for 9 years. He's getting comfortable, he's growing into this role. He's very comfortable about doing things his own way. And if he no longer wants to go to the mausoleum to pay this annual homage to his grandfather, which in the past he would do 7 times a year, in February, April, July, in September, October, December, now it's time to move on. And this is not the first time when he's doing something his own way. If anything, the North Koreans are now practicing social distancing at the highest level. In other words, nothing extraordinary for North Korea, which is the epitome of hermit kingdom and self-isolation. I mean, we always knew North Korea is the country which practices self-isolation. And now when the rest of the world is discovering the North Korean art of self-isolation, all of a sudden we are shocked. Now sanctions, whether they're affecting North Korean economy or not, probably they're affecting it much worse and much more badly than any COVID and any pandemic-related closures. Now, the big question is, what about Kim Jong Un's health? What about what we're hearing, all these rumors? Now, my answer to it is, and I know it's a politically incorrect answer, the newspapers do not want to publish it, and only one newspaper which dared to publish it was criticized for that. North Korea has become a target of malicious disinformation campaign aimed at first raising the uncertainty, creating chaos, and destabilizing the North Korean regime at the time when it was vulnerable, believed to be vulnerable. 2, undermining the North Korean regime's international legitimacy. And number 3, damaging the North Korean-South Korean relations, North Korean-US relations, and the prospects for dialogue and cooperation by trapping the Moon administration and the Trump administration in this big deception. Now, if we evaluate this Kim Jong-un dead, quote unquote, disinformation campaign results, again, it depends on the perspective of the analyst. I mean, on the one hand, when you ask yourself a question, which one is stronger, water or rock? When life places rocks in your path, be the water, as they say, because constant dripping of water will wear away even the solid, the most hardest stone. In English, we have a saying, little strokes fell great oaks. What do I mean? The masterminds of this disinformation attack on Kim Jong Un were able to accomplish a few things. And so probably they're beating their chest saying, yes, we did it. What did they do? First of all, they were able to deflect the global attention, not only from the Moon's administration's success in managing the COVID-19 crisis, to its alleged failure to prepare for the quote unquote North Korean contingency. They were able to deflect from this, the world's attention from the crushing defeat of the opposition party in the South Korean elections to this, again, to the inability of the Moon's administration to prepare for the contingency. Second, and more importantly, they were able to hijack the North Korean policy agenda in Seoul and set the direction of North Korean discourse in global media, at least for 2 weeks, for 2 full weeks, when they kept telling us that Kim Jong Un is dead, the succession is in trouble. They even cooked up that fake video showing Kim Jong Un's funeral, which is irresponsible, which is outrageous. And they kept telling us that the Moon's administration policies and Trump administration policies vis-a-vis North Korea are inadequate, that humanitarian intervention is in order, and that reunification preparations by force must be made as soon as possible. In the process, the reason why they're so happy is because they were able to test the key resonating themes, most effective tools, and the platforms of communication for the spreading of their disinformation, to see how that echo chamber works and really what they can achieve with that. And in the meantime, of course, they reminded the world how fragile the Kim regime is, how little the world knows about its inner workings, and how dangerous it is to leave nuclear weapons in its possession. So again, if you're a hardline opponent of the North Korean regime, then the latest man-made, this drip of malicious poison was definitely worth it. On the other hand, if you take a different perspective, basically if you believe in what doesn't kill us makes us stronger, what doesn't kill us makes us stronger, then Kim Jong Un's yet another resurrection from the dead had the boomerang effect, hurting the perpetrators of this lie. It was a big lie, and strengthening Kim Jong Un in the international opinion. I believe this disinformation campaign actually backfired on its perpetrators. Why? Because not only it confirmed how little even the world's so-called North Korea experts really know about North Korea and how the Kim regime operates, but it also undermined the credibility of the North Korean defectors turned politicians and all the quote-unquote sources inside North Korea. They just cooked up that stuff. But more importantly, it hurt the reputation of global media outlets pontificating about the Kim's regime and essentially perpetuating that lie and refusing to open the door for those people and give the opportunity to those people, to analysts who basically said that's nonsense. There is nothing that's going on. They just wouldn't publish it. Now, these lies, they also enhanced Kim Jong Un's image as a superhero, a superhuman of sorts, who can come back from the netherworld and rise from the ashes. I mean, if anything, they helped the North Korean propaganda to take the Kim's cult of personality to a higher level. Now, thank God, due to President Trump's and President Moon's prudence, these people, they failed to hurt the personal relations between Kim Jong-un and President Trump and Kim Jong-un and President Moon. And thereby, I believe inadvertently, these people, they helped actually improve the prospects for the resumption of bilateral dialogue between the US and North Korea after the US presidential elections, when President Trump is reelected this November. And also they helped inadvertently, again, despite their wishes, to improve the prospects for inter-Korean relations in the midterm, especially after this amazing victory which the President Moon administration scored in the parliamentary elections. Now, in conclusion, basically, I would like to say that I'd like to commend the Washington Times Foundation, the Washington Times newspaper, for staying away from the fake news production, which was directed against the inter-Korean reconciliation, was directed against the denuclearization process by those people who perpetrated it. I know who they are. I'm not going to say it on the air here. I'd like to emphasize the role of the UPF as one of the few true connectors in this world, because the demand for its honest and moral leadership and effective brokering is only going to grow in the post-pandemic world of accelerating deglobalization, import substitution, and growing competing nationalisms, rising fears, and growing selfishness. So it's more important than ever to remind the humankind that we are one family under God. And if we are connected and collaborate, we shall overcome this plague of the 21st century. Thank you very much. God bless you. Stay healthy and stay safe, and take care of your loved ones.
Thank you, Dr. Mansurov, for that passionate and eloquent. You raised a number of issues and addressed them effectively, and particularly brought up the issue of the disinformation campaign, the failures of some of our media, elite media, and so many issues you raised, and particularly pointing to a role that UPF could play, civil society, non-governmental organizations. And you made particular reference to the relationship between Kim Jong Eun and President Trump and President Moon Jae-in. Would you advocate anytime soon some proposal for bilateral or trilateral meetings?
Thank you, Tom, for your question. I would agree with Ambassador DeTrani that what we have ahead of us is the need to implement the Pyongyang Declaration and the Singapore Joint Statement. And to do that, we do not really need any bilateral summitry at this point. If anything, both leaders, they displayed understanding, prudence. They did not get trapped into this lie and the perpetuation of this canard about Kim Jong Un's condition. So they did well. They didn't hurt the relationship. Kim Jong Un didn't hurt the relationship. We just have to wait until the US elections are over, until the American people made its choice known to the rest of the world. And next year, President Trump, President Moon, and Kim Jong Un will be able to pick up the ball where it's sitting now and basically accelerate the momentum towards the implementation of Pyongyang and Singapore declarations.
Well, thank you. We've got a very strong audience of over 200 participants and a lot of chatter that is very laudatory of the three panelists. So they say you're very eloquent and insightful comments, and all of you looking very handsome. So it's good. But I'd like to give them the opportunity. I'd like us to go into gallery mode. And first, I'd say, would Ambassador DeTrani or Ambassador Chung like to make any brief comment about any of the remarks that your fellow panelists have made?
If I may, just one comment.
Sure.
And it relates a little to Ambassador Chung. I think your comments were very good. Look, I think we have to be realistic. North Korea has nuclear weapons for survival purposes. It's survival purposes. And to give up those weapons will be very difficult. And we saw that over the last 26 years, and we had some progress. So let's be realistic here. They're not, with the sense we have, they're not going to use it. He's not suicidal. Our joint forces with the Republic of Korea, with the Joint Command in Seoul, is very powerful. We have joint exercises. So I think Kim Jong Un is a rational actor. He's not suicidal, and we just have to be patient, and we have to work to ensure that he gets the security assurances and the other deliverables he needs if we expect him to give up all his weapons.
Ambassador Chung?
Yeah, I'd like to make one comment about Dr. Mansurov. I have no intention to provide this information about the Kim Jong-un. It is the fact he has a health problem. There is the obvious evidence. Because of the health problem, he is thinking of the possible successor, who will be his sister. His position is upgraded, and that is the preparation is very obvious. So that means there are clear evidence of the Kim Jong Un has a problem. And another one, North Korea as since 2018. North Korean, their attitude is very much changed very much. Now, since they possess the nuclear weapon, they have a clear political intention to unify Korea in North Korean style, North Korean mode. That is very obvious. If they have a genuine intention of solve the nuclear issue or to negotiate this nuclear issue, then they should revise the constitution. In North Korean constitution, they clearly provide they possess nuclear. North Korea is a nuclear state. So at least they should express the statement to revise the constitution when this problem is successfully negotiated out in their favor. So we don't have so clear the evidence.
Thank you, Ambassador Chung. Dr. Mansurov, and then I'm going to turn it over to the audience for their questions.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you, Tom. Kim Jong Un is 36 years old. Yeah, he weighs a little bit more than a normal person. I'm overweight. I drink. I don't smoke. He does. But if we keep talking about his health at this age, despite the history, I do have the history. For the rest of our lives, that's what we're going to be stuck with. I mean, the guy. This is like the 5th or 6th time, we're thrown in this crisis mode because somebody planted a story in the newspaper, which I'm not going to name here, and then basically orchestrated this whole campaign. It's instead of focusing on a major success story in South Korea, the country was able to hold unprecedented elections during the unprecedented crisis, like the pandemic, showing the example to the rest of the world when many other countries are talking about canceling elections, postponing elections. And here, in the most democratic way of not only the country was able to manage the crisis, produce all the PPE, all the test kits, share them around the world, basically sharing its expertise with so many nations, even the United States, while negotiating, on so many fronts, the defense talks with the United States, talks with Japan, which go very, very difficult talks with Japan, China, a lot of pressure. Moon administration is handling pressure so well. And instead of giving credit to them, now, this whole agenda is being hijacked. Our attention is being deflected to a non-issue, the issue which was concocted by malicious people who want basically to spread their malicious disinformation for their own political purposes.
Okay. I really, in the interest of time, I want to move to some questions from the audience. They've waited patiently. I think they're quite stimulated by the presentations. And I'm going to ask Dr. Bill Selig, who's our Q&A moderator, monitor, to introduce the first question.
Thank you, Dr. Walsh. Thank you, gentlemen. Yes, a number of good questions have come in. First of all, a question for Ambassador DeTrani. Why did the six-party talks fall apart? And is there a possibility that they can be revived in the near future?
That's a very good question. Thank you for the question. I hope they could be revived for the future. The six-party talks did have success with the joint statement of September 19, 2005, where North Korea, Kim Jong Il, the father of Kim Jong Un, committed to complete verifiable denuclearization in return for, if you will, security assurance and economic development assistance. It fell apart in 2009 on the issue of verification, where North Korea did not and would not sign an agreement to permit monitors, nuclear monitors, to leave the Yongbyon facility and visit non-declared suspect sites. And that's almost pro forma. And when they did not sign that agreement, things really started to fall apart very, very quickly, unfortunately.
Okay, let's move on to the next question. Thank you, Ambassador DeTrani.
Thank you. This is for Mr. Mansurov. What would a unified Korea look like? What would be the first challenges of uniting the people after 60 years of separation?
You want me to give an honest answer? My honest answer is not in my lifetime. So, you know, I don't want to daydream, but, you know, there are several how it happened in the past. You know, Vietnam gives us one example, Germany gives another example. You know, I hope that something along the lines of the common pan-Korean community one day might emerge. We observe in Europe with the nations from Eastern, Central, Western Europe coming together, having a common market, you know, no borders, common identity. Hopefully one day it might become possible, but again, this is a very, very long shot. I don't think it will happen in Kim Jong Eun's lifetime, because with all the publicly, officially, of course, no North Korean leader can abandon the unification talk, the unification strategy, just like in South Korea. Nobody, no political leader in South Korea can abandon the unification dream. But realistically, we have two very different countries with two very different economic, political systems, and even two emerging different national identities. So if anything, process of reconciliation and rapprochement will be unfolding very slowly, very gradually, and maybe our grandchildren one day, you know, will be fortunate enough to visit unified Korea, like that union state of Russia and Belarus. You know, another way to go, another potential model. But definitely not the German way, which is, or hopefully not the Yemeni way, because we see what happened in Yemen after unification. God forbid, you know, ending up that way. So I'm a little bit on the pessimistic side here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, for Ambassador Chung, from Mr. Khalid Ed Qasim, how can countries threatened by nuclear weapons ensure that they are never used?
Not never used, but we should always think of the 1% of the possibility of using the nuclear weapons. So because of the nuclear the programs and the nuclear weapons, the attitude of North Korea is drastically changing. We should notice it. So that's why we worried about nuclear things. And the international community is worried about the possibility of spreading nuclear weapons even to the terrorists. So that's why international community, including UPF, they watch and so talk about the unification, peaceful unification. And so that is the main reason. And with regard to the unification, the success of the successful unification of German, there is so many factors, but most important international factor is the collapse of the Soviet Union, the weakening of the Soviet Union. So that created a chance for two Germanies to merge each other. But in case of the North Korea, it's different. Now China is emerging. So that is under such a circumstance, we cannot they expect unification, peaceful unification. With regard, we should wait. The North Korean society should be changed. The society, not the leader, should be the more mature. The people of the North Korea should have a different idea. But we could not see yet. But I am very hopeful because North Korea distribution system is collapsed, completely collapsed. The people of North Korea is living on market and information. Mobile phone is spreading enormously. So information is flowing. That is a very good factor for us to see the chance of the change of the North Korean society in a mature way. So
Thank you very much.
The wait until that time.
Thank you, sir. Ambassador DeTrani, is from Dr. Mark Barry. Is there a possibility that the U.S. will withdraw some troops from ROK, partly because of disputes over South Korea's contribution for the basing of U.S. forces?
I hope that's not the case. I hope that's not the case. This is an ongoing, the SMA is an ongoing dialogue. The ROK contributes significantly, about almost what we're looking at is close to 900 million a year. We're talking about going up to possibly 5 billion. There's got to be some movement on both sides, and I think we're coming close to getting some resolution. I don't think that the money should be holding the number of troops to that joint command hostage to that. I think those are separate, very separate issues on that, and hopefully the budget issue will be resolved. We're getting close to resolving it. And the troops, we're talking about 28,500 troops. It's really a tripwire. And that's also a message to further Ambassador Chung. It's a message to North Korea that the United States and the ROK are very close allies, and we want a peaceful resolution to issues. But if North Korea should do anything untoward, and hopefully that is not the case, they're not suicidal. I think we have rational leadership in North Korea with Kim Jong Eun. But the U.S. is committed to that, and that's where the 28,500 troops are. That's got to be, I think, negotiated separately, depending on what the vagaries are. But right now, I don't think it's related to the financial budgetary issues that we're discussing.
I see.
That'll have to be. We'll have one more question from the audience. Bill, I'm sorry. Sorry to many of you who submitted questions that we don't have time for, both by email and some of you through chat. But before we do our wrap up from the speakers, Bill, we have time for one more.
Yes, one last question from Thomas McDivitt. He's asking to Mr. Monseroff, if you were to advise President Trump, President Moon, and Prime Minister Abiy today, looking ahead for the next 2 to 3 years, what would you advise?
Stay the course. Your policies are working. Just give them time. Maximum engagement and maximum pressure will produce results. Just stay the course.
Well, thank you. I'm going to ask one last question, and that would be just, and it may just be that you repeat something you said earlier, but what would be the 1 or 2 steps that you would recommend going forward? Dr. Mansurov, you've to some extent answered that, but maybe by way of summation, invite each of you to make a final intervention of no more than 1 minute, but just remind us or give us an action step, call to action. Okay. Ambassador DeTrani.
Okay, 1 minute. I would say, being we have 2 declarations, the Panmunjom Declaration and the Singapore Joint Statement, and we've had a lot of dialogue with Kim Jong Eun. I think between President Moon Jae-in and Kim Jong Eun to move on intra-Korean relations, to move in that direction, to looking at economic integration. I think that's so powerful. And for the United States, I think reaching out to not only the ROK and Japan, but also Russia and China. Someone mentioned the 6-party talks. I think it was a very, very successful process we had there. Reconstituting something along those lines so that we could look at peaceful resolution and to Ambassador Chung's comments of complete verifiable denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, because we certainly don't want nuclear weapons proliferating in the region or anywhere. So that's what we're looking at. But I think these are achievable, and I think they can be achievable within the next, certainly within the next, there's no question within the next decade, they should be.
Well, thank you, Ambassador DeTrani. Ambassador Chung, your closing.
Yes. Thank you very much. This is a very important webinar, which is very much productive. And the last comment, we should mobilize all the agreement in previous years, but all the agreement was not implemented because the lack of North Korean leadership to implement the agreement. Particularly Hanoi summit meeting wash out all the possibility of the dialogue. As I mentioned earlier, United States should initiate the dialogue because North Korea desperately want to have a talk with the Trump. Now, no matter what and how much our President Moon Jae-in emphasized the intention of cooperation with North Korea, in vain. North Korea despises the talk with us because their priority is to have improved the United States. So United States should initiate all the dialogue. Lastly, as I mentioned, Korea has a historical experience of victimized of because of the friction of the powers. So we need restore the international order, and we want to the good governance of the international order. So the friction between the China and United States should be addressed. That is very important. And we have a very good symptom that quite recently United States and China agreed to the previous trade agreement. That is a good start. So I want to lastly, UPF, the focus on encouraging United States and international community to establish good governance and balance the international order. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Dr. Mansurov.
Okay. To be honest, it's hard to expect much this year because of the pandemic and the upcoming US elections, despite the resounding victory of the President Moon's party. So we'll have to wait until next year, until President Trump is reelected, and President Moon will be going into his final year, thinking about the legacy. Then we'll be able to do something. What I would recommend is that next year, once all the air traffic restrictions are lifted and social distancing measures relaxed, that the UPF and Mother Moon especially will try to reach out to the North in order, again, to increase the transparency in the spirit of collaboration and greater cooperation, inter-Korean reconciliation. And we'll make an effort to go to North Korea, open up North Korea, not only for our members, but for the rest of the world. Really, the UPF must be the honest broker, must play the moral, display the moral leadership, and go to North Korea, open up that country for dialogue along the North-South lines, North-US lines. And so that's for Mother Moon, really, that's her mission, and the next year will be the right time to do it.
Thank you, Dr. Mansurov, for that call to action for UPF and the world powers and all three of our panelists. I think from the chatter I'm reading, the audience is thrilled with your expertise and articulating the issues. and very, very encouraging. You brought honor and dignity to this webinar series. I thank you on behalf of the audience and on behalf of UPF, and I look forward to our ongoing collaboration together. Thank you very, very much. We will have another webinar next week. Same time, we'll send you the details. There will be a recording of this posted shortly, within a matter of hours. It'll be on YouTube and for a wider audience. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Dr. Wall.